Now, today's top stories and Power of 5 weather from News 5. Sponsored by Akron Children's Hospital.
Good Sunday morning, Northeast Ohio. On this last Sunday in March, Thursday marked 1 month since the start of the war in Ukraine. And although it is a war taking place halfway around the world, it is still a war that has impacts here at home. The White House earlier this week highlighting the increasing risk of a cyber attack by Russia against the United States and its businesses. Also this week, the Senate Homeland Security Committee coming out with a report showing how this is an attack already in progress. America's Data Held Hostage is the title of the just-released report by the Senate's Committee on Homeland Security. It found the U.S. suffered an estimated 421 million ransomware attempts last year, a 98% increase from the year before.
It's amazing how many attacks we already have, and with regard to the Ukraine situation, we expect more because the Russians are so frustrated by what's going on in Ukraine and obviously frustrated by the way the West is helping Ukraine in terms of military assistance. So the fear is that they're going to turn some of that anger toward us and do even more attacks.
He's going to play every technology, whether it's using cryptocurrency to evade sanctions, particularly for his wealthy people around him and his own wealth. He's going to play every card he can on cyber attacks. We know we need to be ready for that.
Highly publicized ransomware attacks were the ones to the Colonial Pipeline, the nation's largest fuel pipeline. It supplies 45% of the fuel to the East Coast that was shut down last May. And JBS, the world's largest supplier of beef that shut down meat plants in 6 states. The company ended up paying an $11 million ransom. Payments are not uncommon, the report states. In the first 5 months of last year, financial institutions reported $590 million in ransomware payments. That was a 42% increase over the year before.
It's happening every day. There's hardly a business in Ohio that hasn't been attacked in one way or another. And again, when you're talking about ransomware and some of these really serious attacks, it has a huge impact on people and their personal data and our lives, but also on the economy.
That's why they just passed legislation requiring of the nation's critical infrastructure the reporting of these attempts.
Let's, as an example, say you get attacked as a regional bank in Cleveland. You want to be sure and tell the other regional banks what's going on so that they can protect themselves better.
Now, there is another impact from this war that you probably won't see until next year, and that has to do with the price that you pay for food. I know you're going to make the argument you're already paying more for food, and you are, but because of the impact on farming from this war this year, just wait. Everyday life in much of Ukraine has ground to a halt. That's true in the devastated cities, but also across the vast countryside. Fields that produce enough agricultural products to earn it the nickname the breadbasket of Europe. Those farmers famously pulling tanks with their tractors are not tending to the fields, planting crops, and that's the soon-to-be-felt impact of this war.
I think this is probably one of the biggest global shocks we've seen to world commodity markets, certainly in the last 50 years.
Dr. Ian Sheldon is Anderson's Chair of Agricultural Marketing, Trade and Policy at Ohio State. Ukraine has been the largest supplier of corn to China, while Russia and Ukraine account for 29% of global wheat production, 31% of barley.
And of course, Russia and Ukraine supply, 75% of the world's sunflower oil. So that's having knock-on effects into the vegetable oil market. So, yeah, I think it's a very big shock.
Now, you might think all this is great news for Ohio farmers who are seeing prices for their main crops of corn, soybean, and wheat that they haven't seen in years. But the war in Ukraine, plus inflation as a whole, is impacting their bottom line.
Our inflation this year is 78% over what it was last year.
Portage County farmer Chuck Sayre says they're being hit from several different angles, but a big factor is the skyrocketing cost of diesel.
When we order a tanker load of diesel fuel, it was $8,000 before, now it's $40,000.
And during the upcoming spring planting season, they'll go through a tanker load of diesel a week.
A large tractor like this one behind me, it'll cost us an extra $1,000 a day just in fuel over what it did last year.
On top of that, a lot of fertilizers are petroleum-based, hiking their costs, and one of the world's largest suppliers of fertilizers just happens to be Russia, so that means there'll be less available. And weed killer, he says, that's a whole other issue.
Roundup has quadrupled in price, if you can get it.
Sayre says that's because China, the main producer of it, has cut by a third what they're planning to send to the U.S. this year. As a result, at a time when America will be needed to produce more, farmers might end up not planting more than they can fertilize and protect, which means less than last year.
Which brings your yields down, and as your yields come down, your input costs have gone up, the balance starts to tip very quickly.
All of this, something consumers, he said, will see reflected down the road in their supermarket bill.
When you go to the store now, you're seeing what happened 8 months ago. The bread prices, the milk prices and stuff, that's what happened 8 months ago. For us now, when these input costs go up, when our 78% inflation hits us, we have to pass that on. So as we pass that on, the producers will take our material. This fall, as we harvest, they'll take the material in, they'll process it, it'll become your food for next spring. That's when your inflation will hit.
A lot to take in on a Sunday morning for sure. You're welcome. Hey, real quick before we go, I wanted to let you know tomorrow is debate day here in Ohio in the race for U.S. Senate. Democrats go head-to-head at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Republicans, 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Of course, stay with News 5 on air and online for all of the scores and highlights. Remember, early voting gets underway in just over a week. With Democracy 2022, I'm John Kasich. Enjoy your Sunday.
Sponsored by Akron Children's Hospital.